All right, let's just jump right into this. If you follow the housing market at all, you know the narrative lately. It's been dominated by this massive statewide and really nationwide slowdown. We are constantly hearing about stalled sales, locked in interest rates, and markets that are just entirely frozen. But in today's explainer, we're going to look at a pretty fascinating anomaly. We are heading straight into the Central Valley to figure out exactly why the Fresno housing market is aggressively bucking this trend. I mean, they are completely outperforming much of California right now, and it's honestly a masterclass in regional economics and shifting buyer psychology. So this brings up a huge question, right? One that is probably on the minds of countless families, remote workers, and investors today. Where is the California dream actually still affordable? Because for a long time, the assumption has been that you either pay this massive compounding premium to live in the state, or you just pack your bags and leave entirely. But the data and the local experts on the ground are pointing to this hidden oasis right in the middle of the state. They're completely rewriting that narrative and proving that, hey, the dream hasn't vanished. It just relocated.
Okay, moving into section 1, beating the California slowdown.
According to Jason Ferris, he's the president of the Fresno Association of Realtors, this Central Valley isn't just surviving right now. It's showing some really remarkable resilience. While other major regions, especially along the coast, are seeing activity just stall out entirely, Fresno is reporting highly consistent, steady sales activity. And even more importantly, there is this genuine growing optimism among local real estate pros as we head into the second half of the year. They aren't bracing for a crash, they're actually preparing for sustained, healthy activity. And that distinction is absolutely crucial. In a state where so many markets feel completely paralyzed, sustained, healthy activity is literally the ultimate marker of a robust underlying economy. Right, let's hit section 2, the Fresno affordability advantage. To really grasp this advantage, we first have to look at the broader context of California as a whole. Over $900,000. I mean, wrap your head around that. According to recent reports, the statewide median home price in California has topped $900,000 for 3 straight months. That is a truly staggering figure for a statewide average. And remember, because it's a median, that means half of the homes cost even more than that. It creates this massive, almost insurmountable barrier to entry for the average homebuyer who's just trying to build some equity and put down roots in the state. But here's the wild part. When we compare that massive $900,000 statewide median directly to Fresno, that barrier to entry is literally slashed in half. Less than half. Think about that. You are getting access to the exact same state, the exact same gorgeous climate, and the same broader economy, but for a fraction of the cost. Ferris actually notes that the Central Valley stands out as one of California's absolute strongest values for potential homeowners today. It's essentially a fundamental resetting of expectations. It allows buyers to actually enter the market rather than just sitting perpetually on the sidelines trying to save for a coastal down payment that, let's be real, just keeps moved further out of reach. And you better believe buyers are noticing this. This extreme affordability isn't just some fun local trivia, it is an active economic magnet. Fresno is seeing a very distinct influx of relocating buyers, and they're coming primarily from 2 major traditionally expensive metros, the Bay Area and Southern California. These are folks who are feeling the intense squeeze in those $900,000 plus markets, and they're realizing, wait, I can secure a fantastic home in the Central Valley. They're often bringing their built-up equity or their remote work salaries right along with them. This matters immensely because we're not just talking about local growth here. It's a massive redistribution of equity and talent across the state. It is fundamentally shifting California's economic center of gravity. All right, section 3, the patient home buyer. So, we are definitely no longer in that era of frantic sight-unseen bidding wars that totally defined the last few years. Today, homes in the Fresno area are spending a bit longer on the market. But wait, this isn't necessarily a sign of weakness or some looming downturn. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a sign that families are finally taking a breath. They are carefully, methodically evaluating their options before just throwing out offers. The blind rush is over, right? Deliberate decision-making has finally returned to the home buying process. Buyers want to make sure the home actually fits their lifestyle and their long-term goals before locking themselves into a 30-year commitment. And families aren't just looking at mortgage rates anymore. They are bringing the macroeconomy right down to the kitchen table. Buyers are actively budgeting for everyday rising costs before they commit to a mortgage. They're sitting down and doing the hard math. They're looking at their insurance premiums, the cost of groceries to feed their kids, the price of fuel for their commutes. They are looking at the total holistic picture of their monthly output to absolutely guarantee they aren't going to be completely house poor from day one. And the interesting thing is, the real estate industry is actually welcoming this shift. Jason Ferris puts it perfectly. He says, people are sitting down and asking, if gas, food, and insurance stay where they are, can I really afford this payment? That's a responsible approach, and we love seeing that as agents. I love that perspective. That hesitation isn't a bad thing at all. It represents a highly responsible, sustainable market where buyers aren't over-leveraging themselves on adjustable rates or unrealistic budgets. They're ensuring they can actually afford to keep the homes they buy, which creates a solid bedrock of stability for the entire Fresno market. Okay, moving on to Section 4, tossing the 2021 playbook. Because there is a stark pivot happening on the ground right now, Ferris has actually made it a major goal of his term to tell agents to literally throw away the tactics of 2021. I mean, the old playbook was entirely transactional and incredibly fast-paced, right? It was strictly about getting in, winning the bid at all costs, and just moving on to the next deal. But the new playbook? It's fundamentally different. It requires stepping up and making the process about family and genuine long-term homeownership. It's about being an advisor who guides a family through a massive life transition. You're navigating their budget concerns, finding the right neighborhood fit, not just closing a quick, frantic deal. And to execute this new playbook, the Fresno Association of Realtors is focusing really heavily on education. Midway through his term, Ferris highlighted that expanding professional development for members has been one of his proudest accomplishments. By educating agents on how to communicate with and properly serve this new, patient, highly budget-conscious buyer, they are effectively raising the standard across the entire local real estate industry. They're building a more resilient, knowledgeable workforce that can weather these slower markets simply because they provide undeniable value to their clients. Which brings us to Section 5, the human element remains. Now, artificial intelligence is undeniably changing how real estate agents work, for sure. But there is a very clear, defined dividing line in its utility here. On one hand, AI is fantastic for the operational side, It can seamlessly streamline marketing, build property websites, and draft those initial client communications. But Ferris heavily cautions against relying on it without human verification. Why? Because you absolutely cannot replace local knowledge. When it comes to accurately pricing a home on a very specific Fresno street, or accurately estimating what a trusted local contractor will actually charge for renovations, AI falls entirely short. That requires a human being who truly knows the local dirt. And this ties directly into how the industry is moving forward right now. Because that human element is so crucial, Ferris is making it an absolute priority to reconnect the local real estate community. Looking ahead for the rest of his term, the focus is squarely on strengthening real, in-person relationships among agents and increasing community engagement through networking and fundraising events. Because think about it, a strong, deeply connected network of agents is far better equipped to serve those patient, relocating families we talked about earlier. They have their fingers on the pulse of the actual community they are selling. So, what does this all mean? We'll wrap up this explainer with a final thought to leave you with. Does the Fresno model represent the future of California real estate? We've seen how incredible affordability, combined with responsible, patient buyers, and a real estate industry heavily focused on community and long-term family advising, is creating a thriving market right in the middle of a massive statewide slowdown. Is this just a local anomaly that's going to fade, or is this a real blueprint for how the rest of the state might eventually have to adapt to survive? It's a fascinating shift for sure, and definitely one we're going to keep our eyes on. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this, and keep learning.